Hi, Sarah.
Hey Louise.
How are you?
I'm all right. No insult to the author whatsoever, but I'm looking
Mm,
forward to the end of this book.
yeah.
It's just every we not that, many adoption stories, books that we read aren't,
Mm-mm.
joyful by
No.
any stretch of the imagination. But this is just endless despair.
Yeah. It's just disturbing. It's
Mm-hmm.
to the core. Like I
Mm-hmm.
dread the reading
I know.
because because we're empaths too. So
Yeah.
I think about it and what, I picture the mother that's the child's torn from her arms or, I can't, which we know happens, but this is just a lot of information about it. And
Yeah.
we have gotten some notes that are funny from our listeners who are like, I'm so glad you're reading this for me.
Right. For me. Yep. We're doing that lifting.
Doing the lifting. So this is called George's Adults.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just I mean, it starts off just Georgia was this certain Memphis person that could get kids, like she could be soft spoken. They get into like how she could be soft spoken. She got kids to go with her. Here's the promise of ice cream. It came down to just kidnapping. I mean, really, she just kidnapped kids wherever she could get them, had the whole community involved.
Well, the chapter starts off with a pretty tragic story about an
Mm-hmm.
18-year-old who gave birth to a baby born in 1943. She was unconscious almost from the heavy dose of the anesthesia, which is what they did in those days, knocked
Mm-hmm.
the women out. And she was signed a routine paper that she was lied to about what that
Yeah.
routine paper was. And it was her giving up her rights to her child, which she didn't, consciously do that. And
No.
she filed a habeas corpus suit.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that her doctor was also George's doctor. So
Mm-hmm.
that doctor testified in court saying, no, she knew what she was doing. I
Right.
mean, you like down to the doctors who, by the way, take a Hippocratic oath.
Yeah.
So I wonder how any of these doctors really reckoned with their souls at the end of the day, or
I don't
did
know if
they?
I feel like they didn't. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but it just depresses me. Like the whole thing about the poverty, it was all about if you were poor, if you didn't understand the law, if you were poor, if you know, she had one woman who gave birth to a baby they took after she had already lost three kids to
Hmm.
Georgia. And some of
I
these
mean, just,
people I was impressed with because they still went and filed lawsuits and pursued it for years. There was a dad who was uneducated and poor I mean, a dad back in that era,
he
that's
had
pretty,
been a soldier
he had
and
been a
then went to
soldier.
California to get work and was told that
Yeah.
she would send his kids out to him and she didn't. So he gave up the job, went
Yes.
back and fought to get them back and he couldn't get them.
He was a veteran in the war and came back and couldn't get his
Hmm.
children back. He thought they were being watched for why he got work. I mean, he was just blatantly lied to. And that's what I mean. I was so impressed with even some of these people that stuck with it for years
I
with
mean,
lawsuits.
wouldn't you think about
Yeah.
that? Uh,
But
Till
just
my
not having it.
dying day, I would have
Yeah,
fought for my child to get him back.
me too.
There, I thought this was a really interesting because we talk about how did she get away with this, and she, it was great. Right here it says Georgia was also aided by circumstance. So this
Mm,
was, during the Depression, like
yeah.
it was a perfect storm. That stock market, Black
Yeah.
Friday in October of 1929 was a
Yes.
misfortune for many and a great fortune for Georgia Tan
Yeah.
because
That's
she just preyed on vulnerable, desperate people.
yeah. They had they get into also, this the language they started using about adoption, right? Like before this, which I found interesting to kind of get into the history a little bit, a single mother was still sort of supported to raise her child. She started making it a bad thing, like that's a bad thing, right? She's kind of
Hmm.
the narrative of what is it, a marketing campaign
Right.
that you shouldn't, because they used to actually know that, okay, yes, you're poor, yes, you're single, yes, you're having a baby. They would help
They would
actually.
help.
It was
Yeah.
a and everyone drew to help. And here there's this part that says, um Social workers were altruistic. Then they were soon persuaded that the best interest of poor, illegitimate children was adoption. Oh, I can't speak today. These benefits came to be considered so great and their absence so punitive that single mothers who wanted to keep their babies were considered selfish. And while it was usually Georgia and her later intimidators who literally stole children, social workers throughout the country began urging single women to relinquish their babies supposedly out of love for them. And this is throughout the whole country because of this movement in Memphis.
Right, because of this movement. Because it said in the centuries before Georgia began her business, single mothers of all races were both allowed and expected to raise their children.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, think about this. This
shift.
is all Georgia tan.
I think about it because of our mothers. I mean, and many of our adoptees that have been on and their mothers, they were told this. They were made to feel shameful that they couldn't do it alone, that it wasn't good for the child. It's just,
and she had these laws struck down because it used to be that states mandated that single mothers breastfed their babies for 6 months. So she had those struck down so that she was able to just, I mean, I highlighted
me
so much. And I don't know that we can, it's a long chapter and I don't know, I think you get the gist of this. But like to virtually, here's just some of the things I highlighted. By the late 1930s, single mothers were not only being prevented from bonding with their babies, but often even from seeing them. Mothers were sometimes blindfolded during labor. Some social workers urged pregnant young women to sign forms allowing doctors to circumcise their child if it turned out to be a boy so that the workers could keep mothers uninformed even of their baby's gender.
Is that insane? Blindfolded during birth and tied down. There was one part where they talked about they tied down the women and they got no medication, if they, they were made to suffer.
Well, and I do want to call out someone who was a beloved American, Pearl Buck.
I was surprised by that. Not like I'm a huge Pearl Buck fan, but I was still really surprised by that.
Barely remember Pearl Buck, to be honest.
Well, wasn't she though always kind of like on the fringe of funny and it'd be kind of like
I feel like was she in Hee Haw or something?
Yeah, I don't know, something, but she was
something. Sorry, Pearl Buck fans.
Pearl Buck fans, I'm no longer because not only did she support Georgia's whole idea for adoption, she went on.
She advocated legislation forcing women to surrender their babies for adoption.
And she thought so, and to virtually everyone but birth parents and adoptees, adoption came to be seen as the perfect solution for infertility throughout the country. And there you go. And
there is where we, land still today. Although today it's now surrogacy and lots of other things that, we talked in our last episode with Moses about. But
such a learning process.
It is. Gosh. And there's just so much more to keep learning and being aware of and staying up to date with. It's a lot.
It is a lot. Well, next week we do Georgia's Children.
Georgia's Children. That should be a cheery one.
And
that'll be fun.
We have to laugh sometimes, so please don't send us a hate mail that I
don't. We're not. If you don't laugh, it's just a lot of darkness.
We've had a lot of tears on this thing, so this journey. Well, we're excited because Vicky is coming up, and she is a friend of someone we are close to.
Yes. Hey, Carly.
See you soon.
Okay. See you in a minute.